Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Brennan, coming to you live from the Key Financial studio here in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Welcome to the Patty Brennan Show. Whether you're looking to buy Christmas presents for your children or you're looking to buy a new jet for yourself, this show is for those who want to protect, grow, and use their assets to live their very best lives. Gosh, that sounds good, Patty. Welcome to the show, Patty.
Michael, I love your intro. Because that pretty much runs the gamut, doesn't it?
It certainly does. It certainly does. So thank you for joining. I guess it's kind of odd for me to say joining your show, but thank you for joining my show here today.
Well, thank you for being willing to be the guest host, because this show is about the conference circuit, right? And
yes,
you know what? I've been to a lot of conferences, so I figured, okay, maybe I'll share what I learned.
Yeah, frankly, you have been running. I miss you. I haven't seen you as much recently. I'm used to day in, day out getting to interact with you. But you know what? You are presented with these opportunities to go and further the knowledge of yourself, your team, the firm, which ultimately will be for the benefit of our clients, of our listeners, of anybody that's tuned in to all things Key Financial.
It's amazing. It's so much fun because I get to leverage myself in a way, because I go to these things, I get invited. It's pretty crazy, Michael, that I'm invited to these things and that I'm actually on these stages. And what a privilege it is to be able to get this information, bring it back here, share it with 30 of my closest colleagues, and then let them share it with our clients. Apply the information that we are learning. That's the whole point.
Right. So not all of us have this incredible opportunity to hear this type of information, really unfiltered, unbiased, and untweaked. You know, sometimes the raw data can be tweaked ever so slightly into a certain headline that may align with specific news outlets' specific philosophy. Would you be willing to share some of the insights that you were able to gain while rubbing elbows with a lot of, frankly, really famous people in this industry?
Absolutely. And you know what? I feel like that's my job. And to really bring it back without those biases, because we hear it all, right? And it's not my job to filter it. It's just to, share it and let people filter for themselves.
Love it. So why don't we hit the ground running here? So let me ask you, Patty, would you like to go geographically here or go by topic? Because there's some topics that we could hit on, or we could just go east to west, because you have been all over the country.
Well, you know what? It's interesting, Michael, because every conference that I've been to, and I should say so far, because I've got 2 more before the end of the year.
God bless.
I will tell you that the themes really rhymed a lot. It was, whether it was Advisor Hub in New York City, and New York City was kind of cool because it was convenient for some of the, the rich and famous to attend. And then we were in Vegas, and we're here and there. And so it's really good to go to these locations and really understand what people are thinking. And again, it is what it is, right? I bring it back and et cetera. So we can do a little bit of both. I will tell you that the themes really were very similar in a lot of the conferences.
Were any of the themes surprising at all?
That's a really good question. I would say not really, but maybe a little bit. For example, like, artificial intelligence, the election, the market at all-time highs. Those were topics that I would have expected. What I didn't expect was the amount of people that were talking about alternative investments, right? And I'll share what I learned and what we're doing about it.
Okay.
The thing probably that I was most surprised at is the discussion about how large an advice gap there is in America today. In other words, there's lots of information.
Sure.
But what so many people shared was that money really doesn't solve problems, but good advice can.
Wow.
And I got to tell you, Michael, for you and there is no better time to be in the advice industry, because it's really needed. Good, to your point, unbiased, unfiltered advice that's geared to the human that we are in front of. So that was cool. That was probably the biggest surprise, how much people were focused on the need to improve business models.
It sounds like there's almost a problem. Is that what you're saying? This advice gap is one large problem. And how would we define the problem before we get to an answer?
That is the problem because, the issue has been historically everybody was focused on answers without really understanding what the problems are. Okay, so, in my prior life, prescription before diagnosis was considered malpractice.
Right.
Same thing applies to people's money. And I think that is beginning to be understood, that so many people are out there talking about their products, their investments, their insurance solutions, et cetera, and they're not really asking the questions in a way that people feel listened so that they could feel listened to. And I think that that's really been missing. But you know what? It's kind of what we've been doing all along.
Is it possible that a robot or any type of artificial intelligence could assist in solving this problem?
That is a great segue because that was the big solution, right?
Right.
Again, this is an industry that's just wants the quick fix, right? And I'm not saying that artificial intelligence isn't exciting because, as you know, I'm looking into it big time. It's data. The thing that's cool to me is we have 30 years worth of data, whether it be just from our client notes or the portfolios, the financial plan, the tax returns, the legal documents. It's amazing. What's really cool to me is that artificial intelligence can actually make us better at what we do. I think that no matter what happens, the biggest, best firms out there, like frankly us, are going to be digital hybrids. We use a lot of technology, as you well know, and it's a way of harnessing the information in a way that's easier to digest and so that opportunities and issues bubble up automatically. So I think that artificial intelligence is going to be great in the future. There's always got to be a human being to interpret it and to make sure that it's somewhat accurate.
Of course. And at the end of the day, I think back to a meeting that we had last week, and in the meeting, towards the end, the clients actually started to cry.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen if you're not present. It makes me think back to, and I'm really going off script here, I apologize, but it makes me think about, there's a famous study where they took baby monkeys and they placed them on essentially a metal mother that held them versus a clothed, fully feathers. Monkeys don't have feathers. I'm sorry. Fully furred is, I guess, is the right terminology there. I'm sorry for any monkeys listening. And they measured what the response was, how it felt like to be nurtured by a metal or a robot, technically, sort of mother monkey, and the results were fascinating.
Michael, I got to tell you that fast forward, think about what you did yesterday for 30 people in the planning lab. Folks, for those of you who are listening or watching, we have something called the planning lab where we all get together as a team. It's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and it's really zeroed in on a particular topic. It could be about Monte Carlos or correlation coefficients or whatever. Just one topic, deep dive, 20 minutes in and out. Yesterday, you did a planning lab on how to ask questions. And that was fascinating because what you shared with everybody were the studies where people, it really studied the impact of one question versus another on the brain.
On the brain.
Activity of the brain.
Yes.
So that it was scientifically based, and it was just really cool.
Thank you.
That is the difference maker because it's about relationships.
It is.
And understanding. And that, circle back, is the issue that the industry has had and continues to have, in my opinion.
So artificial is great, wonderful, love it, sure. Why aren't we using it now?
Well, it's really interesting because what I learned there in these meetings was that 70%, people assume that 70% of our work is actually already being done by AI. And it is not because AI is pretty scary on the other hand. It's powerful, it's wonderful, it's machine learning. However, the unintended consequences are, well, the data's out there. Who's protecting people's identity? What are they doing with clients' data, our data? And what could happen from there? Machines have it. This is all about machine learning. It's a compounding thing, right? What goes on from there? So I just want to be very thoughtful about it. We are not using it. I will tell you that the one thing we might start doing is basically having it on a computer for meetings so that notes can be taken. Instead of having 2 or 3 people in every meeting, it makes us that much more productive.
Oh, well, that's interesting, Patty. I honestly didn't expect note-taking to be the first place that we are using artificial intelligence. Frankly, I would have thought or assumed maybe somewhere in the portfolio department, tax efficiency, so on and so forth. I did not see that coming.
Well, you know what? To me, first of all, that's a problem that, or not a problem, that's something I'd like to solve for, because we usually have at least 2 people, sometimes 3 people involved in every meeting. And those meetings can be an hour, hour and a half. Then the people are typing up notes and putting them in our systems. The advantage of AI is that you don't need the people. They can be doing other things, serving our clients, number one. Number two, the way that these programs are written, they're in a black box, so I don't have as much cybersecurity and identity risk that I think about, which is, to me, a big, big risk. And it's in our own little ecosystem so that we can use it, and it's searchable. And by the way, we get the notes within 10 minutes, and there's action items at the end of every note. Now, sure, we're going to have to read them, review them, edit them where needed, because again, I just think that human element's going to be important. I've already seen, examples of how these things can work, and they need a human being in their eyes to review and make sure that they're accurate and captured everything.
Right. That's.
Can you imagine that if we're applying that to the portfolio management and the tax planning? Oh my goodness. For example, we reviewed a system that was AI, that was a phenomenon. It sounded great on the outside. Then we decided to really get it. Beyond getting a demo, we worked with it for a month. The calculations were wrong. So we could have been recommending Roth conversions without taking into consideration the implication on somebody's Social Security and their Medicare premiums. Right? They can just take you so far. Right. And it's got to be done on a personal level. Some people's Medicare premiums are not going to be affected. Other people's are.
Wow.
So what we want to do is optimize for each family. End of discussion.
So there's certainly some landmines out there that still exist. The deep fakes, all of that stuff, it is frankly downright scary.
Oh, Michael, I got to tell you, it scares the you-know-what out of me. They gave several examples. For example, you and I can do this podcast today. Now this is on the World Wide Web. They can take our voices, take our images, and create a deep fake so that they could call somebody pretending to be me. It sounds exactly like me with exactly my tone and emphasis, etc. Even the video. And nobody can know the difference. This is why I will tell you that the way that we're going to do things, anytime we talk to a client, sure, we'll ask the security questions, but the security questions are going to be different, such as, gee, what did you talk about with Patty and Michael in the last meeting? Like something that nobody would know and you can't see it. You're not going to find something like that on Facebook. Or one of the things, what we've been doing with our clients is coaching our clients and saying, okay, for your security questions, we're going to ask you, where you went to high school. Why don't you give us a random answer like blue or dog? Something that has nothing to do with the question, but you know what the answer is, and we know what your answer is, and nobody's going to guess that, right?
Or in my case, and I'm not giving anything away here. Don't worry. I know I know the team in here is probably like, oh God, what is he going to say? He's about to give away his whole his Social Security, his home passcode. But in my case, what I've actually done is, for example, what street did you grow up on? Michael Jordan. Who was your first childhood pet? Scottie Pippen. Who was your favorite middle school teacher? Dennis Rodman. So I'm going all Chicago Bulls players there.
Okay, very good. Okay. So it's easier for you to remember, but nobody else is going to.
I didn't actually, and you happen to know this, but I actually did not grow up on Michael Jordan Drive. But I know when the security question pops up that asks me for where did I grow up, what street did I grow up on?
So let me play devil's advocate. Artificial intelligence would notice a pattern so that third question, the pattern might be, okay, they're going to guess Dennis Rodman. So be careful about that stuff. Patterns, that's how AI works.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll switch it up to some Phillies players.
What was really interesting, I found, was when we talk about tax law, because there is this preconceived notion, this assumption that if Democrats win, if Harris wins, et cetera, that tax rates are going to skyrocket, et cetera. That could happen. But then we were reminded that Obama actually in 2012 signed a permanent extension of the tax cuts. So never say
permanent.
Never. Permanent, yeah, because then, they had the sunset provision back then as we do today. And that's what everybody's, concerned about.
Now, of course, yes, of course. Let's not forget that even just yesterday, they announced that, not COLA, but that the actual tax brackets were going to be increased.
Yep, exactly. I think it was 2.8%.
Right.
Which is built into the law.
Right.
I think that's fine. I think that no matter what, we should go into this understanding that deficits are going to continue to rise.
Right.
Our government debt is an issue.
Sure.
Probably not an issue short term, but intermediate and long term could be an issue. The other side of it is there is no other nation in the world that comes close to America, right?
Amen.
In terms of the wealth, the productivity gains that we've had even in the last 5 years. So, we can be negative Nancy's all day long, and that would get lots of headlines and people would want to hear more. But, never say never. It's a pretty good place to have your money.
Couldn't agree more. And certainly I feel that the overall economy, the fact of the matter is it's been growing at a 2.5% to 3% rate. It's pretty darn good, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, because of where we are in the economy, it's probably not going to get worse because the Federal Reserve seems to be on this path of lowering interest rates. Now, who knows what's going to happen? They lowered 0.5 point. I find it interesting. Let's get into investments for a second, that the bond market, the 10-year Treasury, has gone up to 4.2%, even though they lowered rates by 0.5%. So go figure. So there seems to be a little bit of a difference of opinion in terms of where we are with inflation, and time will tell. We're a service-based economy, and, services really are interesting because when you go back, 30, 40 years, there's only been 2 quarters because, of course, when interest rates are higher, people are worried about a recession. There's only been 2 quarters where services sector actually went negative. It was during the financial crisis and the pandemic.
Wow.
Services tend not to go through recessionary periods. Housing right now is sticky. It's kind of the cost of housing continues to inflate, and that's really hard for the Federal Reserve to affect.
At times, when thinking about the economy and the broad markets, I can't help but think about the famous movie, I believe with Brad Pitt, about Benjamin Button. It feels like the economy has a bit of a Benjamin Button thing going on here, where we were in like the late stage of a cycle. The next thing in your traditional business cycles is we go into that sort of recession area. It feels like we are going backwards here. We're going back to the mid-stage cycle, which is fascinating.
And it's unusual, too. And it's so, people talk about hard landings, soft landings, no landings. And I think that your observation, never saw the movie, by the way, but I think it's a very accurate assessment of what is happening. Things are actually getting better, not worse.
Right.
And that's why I believe the market is responding and doing as well as it is this year. Now, keep in mind, the other topic was all about valuations, the fact that it's way, way high.
Of course.
Multiples are so high, et cetera. The one thing that was really interesting, and this was a common theme in all of the conferences, is that, okay, multiples are high, the market is expensive. But if we take out the Mag 7, the 7 companies that seem to be going nuts, which, by the way, are beginning to go down a little bit, the market isn't really that overvalued. It's fairly valued. And there are pockets that are really discounted. Again, I think it was Bernstein who brought out 2 companies. He said, everybody's talking about NVIDIA. He said, but what about a company called ball bearings?
I mean, ball bearings historically are, everything needs ball bearings.
Right.
And back in World War II, we found this whole, when we were trying to figure out where to hit Germany, where it would hurt the most, would it be to hit the bridges? Would it be to bomb the water centers? Where would be the most effective place to place a bomb? They came to the conclusion that the ball bearing factory was it. And it was it, because everything needs ball bearings.
Wow.
Talk about cars, guns, everything that we use uses some type of ball bearings.
Well, it's so interesting because that's exactly what Rich brought up. He said, AI, technology, chips,
Right.
granted, but there's a mid-cap company, small-cap companies, all they do is make ball bearings. And guess what? Their performance is better than NVIDIA, and nobody has any idea, and nobody cares.
It may not be the sexiest, but it works.
And that's where there's lots of values out there, where I think the indices tend to kind of hide the value that, is everything a value, by the way? No. For example, 40% of small companies don't make any money. So you got to be really careful there. But there are some companies that are making money hand over fist, and their stocks don't reflect that.
Let me ask you a question, Patty. Would it ever make sense just to buy the 493 stocks?
Michael, that's a great question. Our friends at First Trust came in, and I got to tell you, it was an amazing meeting. I can't believe that they came all the way here. But they showed us a graph of other periods in our history where, so much of the performance came from just so few companies, and what happened going forward, the 10 years going forward. And if you just pick those 493 companies in this example, or in theirs, I think it was the bottom 90%, the performance, even though the market itself plummeted, and in some cases down 30, 40, almost 50%, those companies, equally weighted, did double-digit returns. 10%, 12% rate of return per year, defying what was happening overall.
Right.
So I would say maybe. Again, we're not here to give advice. Maybe. There's a lot of junk in those 493 companies also. So that's the only caveat that I would add. Value is something that I think is a powerful concept. I mean, the clothes you and I are wearing today, we paid for these clothes for a reason. We were willing to give up our dollars to have the clothes because we felt that there was more value in the clothing. That is really important to keep in mind when it comes to investing. That's what you want.
Wow, thank you for that, Patty.
So let's bring it back to the conferences, and I want to share some of the other insights that I heard over and over again. For example, talk about China. I sent my quarterly letter. It was all about the China stimulus and the fact that their market that has underperformed by 8,000 basis points. That is a lot over the last 10 years. Here we were all afraid. Many people were concerned about China overtaking the U.S. economy, and they probably will eventually, but not anytime soon. They're trying to figure things out because they're having major problems. So here we are back in the United States, and how do we feel about international investing? Again, if we want values, sure, those markets are undervalued relative to the U.S. However, we're comfortable being here, and the best companies are profiting from being overseas, being in those markets. I think that the key here is to stay on what it is that people want to hear. What can we expect going forward? Is it more of the same? We got to look around corners that we really can't do. So, let's talk about that.
Right. I'd be curious to hear if there was any quote unquote experts there talking about Russia, China, any unholy alliances going on.
Yes. I would definitely, John Bolton was there.
Wow.
He was fascinating. And he is concerned about all of that going on. You know, the Russia-China alliance and North Korea and Iran, they seem to be teaming up against the U.S. And I will tell you that I think that China is really watching our approach to not only Ukraine, but the Israel conflict in Gaza, et cetera. Because if we kind of step aside and turn a blind eye, I think China is going to see that as a signal and go into Taiwan, or at least that's what a lot of people believe. We have to be careful, because if that happens, then goodbye Taiwan Semiconductor and the chips that we all rely on.
And just to make sure that I heard you correctly, when you say China go into Taiwan, you mean go into Taiwan and setting up factories?
Yeah, and taking over. I mean, basically, that's a major shipping lane.
Right.
And China basically owns it, but they've always allowed the goods to come in and out. And at any time, they can say, okay, we're done with that.
Right.
So that would impact our economy in a big way, because we're not quite yet ready yet with the factories currently being built.
Okay.
So between that, and then all of a sudden, then the question, and this could be a story, could this be, okay, once they're in Taiwan, does that mean they're going to go into the Philippines? And once they're in the Philippines, and then they're going to go into Japan, and, et cetera. So this bipolar world, the U.S. and Russia, the concern would be, does it become a tripolar world?
Wow.
Where Russia and China then have more power over the U.S.? That's what John Bolton was concerned about. Who knows? And I think it's one of those things where it's certainly nothing we can invest on. And I'm not going to change what we do because of something that none of us have any control over. And I think that's probably the most important thing, is we hear these things, read the headlines. From a practical perspective, what are we going to do about it?
Control your controllables.
Exactly. Right. And those controllables are at home. It's cash flow. How much tax do you pay? What rate of return you need to earn to make sure you never run out of money? How much risk? What is your risk capacity? Tolerance is one thing, but as we all know, I don't think risk tolerance can be measured. You don't really know until you're in it.
Right.
But risk capacity can. So let's do the work, run the numbers, and understand. So getting back to what was the biggest surprise is how much focus there was on the advice gap. How few people really have either the technology, the willingness to invest in people and technology internally, and the long-term vision to really create this service model that is there to provide true advice that is customized and personalized. I will tell you, and this is a sidebar, but I was asked to interview Jenny Johnson. Jenny Johnson is unbelievable, Michael. Like, I can't believe that I was asked to interview this lady. She's the CEO of a $1.6 trillion company.
Wow.
Trillion. And I will tell you, she's on the board of Stanford. She's on the board of, the New York Stock Exchange. She's in Singapore. She was so interesting. What I was impressed with was, based on all of her travels and all of the research, she said, nothing's going to be able to replace the human touch. We have to remember the importance of the human touch.
Wow. Would it be okay if just for 1 second, Patty, I took a quick step backwards and asked you about this advice gap? Is this advice gap you're referring to specifically in the financial industry? Is the advice gap, does it flow to every other industry? Are we talking about the advice gap between Joe, who runs the mechanic shop up the street from us, not having a successor who can actually do the things that need to be done to a car at a reasonable price? What do you mean by this advice gap?
Well, it's a really good question, Michael, because I think it was really geared towards our industry.
Okay.
However, now that you bring it up, there's a big gap all over the place. Again, think about medicine and these poor doctors who have to be typing while they're asking you the questions. I mean, come on.
Right.
Where's that human? They didn't go into medicine to do that.
Right.
Or the mechanic, right? I mean, I had my car at the dealership. It was incredible how much money that they were charging me. I had somebody else who knows me, et cetera. They were doing it for a third of the price.
Wow.
So, again, who's looking out for the people?
Mm-hmm.
That's where the gap is. And it could be seen in other industries as well. All I know is we're going to do it here in Westchester for our clients. We've got a farm team, right? And
right.
You mentioned that. I mean, I think of you and so many of our colleagues here. You're all part of the farm team. And what a privilege it is for me to share insights that I learn at these conferences with all of you so that to accelerate your learning. And it's so cool to watch as you grow. We incorporate these things. I am agnostic. I'm going to learn about this stuff and we'll adopt it carefully, thoughtfully, as long as it benefits our clients. End of discussion.
Giddy up, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.
All right, now you know the real Patty Brennan. Giddy up is right. Okay. All right, thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patty. Thank you for sharing that the insights that you have learned over the past couple of weeks of traveling, and thank you for doing that for not just our firm, not just for me, but for the clients, for the friends, the family, the loved ones.
You got it. Absolutely. It's what I was meant to do, I suppose. What a privilege it is. Again, like I said, I can't believe that I'm asked to do these things. I get this advisors to watch designation. I don't know what people are watching. But
Oh, stop it. You're incredible. We all know you're incredible.
All right, let's go back. Let's go back. Can we go from you saying
Thank you.
and then you can just end anchor by saying, and thanks to all of you.
Yeah, thanks to all of you.
That's an easy
Good.
segue. So she said
It's true.
something like, thanks for having me on
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
No problem. And thanks to all of you.
And thanks to all of you for tuning in. If you have any
Yeah.
questions, you want to send us an email.
Yeah.
Go to
to
our website,
www.
www. Just the usual
Share
suspects.
this.
Have fun, Michael. Right now, you're done. Great
Yeah.
show, great episode. Have fun in the close. Land the plane. Have fun landing the plane. Don't just have fun.
Yeah.
Say I'm a carer. Just do it. It closes with Patty saying thank you, and thanks to all of you. Look right at the camera. Thanks to all of you for tuning in today. I've had a blast here, Patty. I know you've had fun here. We've all learned something. If you have any questions, go to our website, keyfinancialinc.com. keyfinancialinc.com. Send us an email if you'd like to have an appointment, and see you next time. That's it. In and out.
And thank you, Patty. And thank you to all the listeners out there. If you have any...
Okay?
Good.
Have fun. You're having fun.
Thank you, Patty. And thank you very much to all of the listeners that have tuned in today. This has been fun. It's been great. I hope that you've enjoyed it, maybe picked up a thing or two. If you'd like to learn more about any of this, or frankly have any questions at all, please visit our website, www.keyfinancialinc.com. Or better yet, you know what? Shoot me an email. My email address is my first name at keyfinancialinc.com. I would love nothing more than a subscriber of the podcast to send me an email. It would be fantastic to connect.
That would be great, Michael. That would be terrific. And what a wonderful way to end it.
All right, take care, everybody.